Welcome to the You're Doing It Wrong podcast. I'm your host, Christian. Today, I've got the Brain Trust, Rob and Van joining me, enterprise architects and overall PIA or AI people. So, Van, you've joined me before, but Rob, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on. You guys hopefully have brought a drink along or a tea. I think maybe, Rob, you've got something interesting to drink. Van's got, what have you got there, Van?
My emergency Lefroy.
I've got a port. And Rob, what do you got today?
I have peppermint and passion fruit tea.
Lovely.
And I think that...
This is
I've never
seen someone who has a 2-year-old, you see.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never seen peppermint and passion fruit together in a tea. That's
right.
That's a new one.
I was just going for peppermint, and I got the first box in the cupboard, and it said peppermint and passion fruit. And I thought, oh, close enough. Oh, half of it's peppermint.
Half of it, right? Yeah.
Here it is.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. So this has been a very interesting week, and this podcast episode is going to be dedicated to AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and basically anything around that we can think of. As we see 2025, but whenever ChatGPT came out, what was that, 2023? It was year of AI, but I believe that 2025 really will be the year of AI, because I think people now have had enough time to play with it, and new models are coming out all the time. And we've seen DeepSeek make lots of news this week, sending everyone into a frenzy. There's a lot going on there, but and we'll get into some details, but any opening remarks, Rob?
Yeah, I mean...
I'll jump in and cut you off because I know you're long-winded.
No, I think this year, seriously, we're starting to see AI as a commodity, something that's more accessible to a larger number of people, direct consumers in particular. It's being embedded into products, whether you like it or not in some cases. Even just looking at the tooling and the development community, things have started to become more streamlined, which is always kind of a sign of a maturity step up. Yeah, I think 2025 is going to be a breakthrough year. There's a few barriers that I think either we've already seen assailed to a certain extent, or ones that probably will, in particularly in terms of delivering it to the edge, to devices that can handle it, particularly in an offline capability. Game changer, potentially. Still lots from an architecture perspective to absorb, I think, and I'm sure we'll get to it in today's conversation. I'm keenly interested to see how the industry responds, because I think between the three of us, we're batting how many years in technology and in architecture, and never seen anything develop like this in the time frame that it has, with the potential reach that it has. I think this is probably something we've not seen before.
Yeah,
it's
not the speed.
Are all there.
Yeah. Van, any opening remarks from you?
No, I'm just interested to see what you guys have been playing with lately since you started playing with the LLMs. I've got new friends that are going to be playing in the toy section today with me. But I'm really interested to see what you guys have found and stuff like that, because I've been playing with DeepSeek and checking out, what, from my perspective, the parameters of it are. And it's really intriguing how it's actually, I got to say, it's definitely got a political bias to it, I think, and especially around the things like you asked about Tiananmen Square. There's been papers like that right now. And, it doesn't want to answer stuff like that. But you asked about Mao's Great March, goes on quite a bit about it. So I've just finished a book on Xi Jinping, a lot of stuff in there that sort of I've been asking it about, which you go, nah, nothing about that. But I'm wondering, one of the things we may want to talk about is what happens when we have an AI model that we're using that has constraints that can shape the culture, shape our thinking by its very nature of its responses. So now I'd love for you guys to have a go at it, because nobody's going to believe three old guys.
What do you think if we start to rely on it more, like we do, say, Google, where it
I am already. Sorry to say.
What does it mean when what something returns doesn't cover or conveniently ignores other information?
Yeah. So
how quickly do we lose connection to the full story or the full truth or all the facts?
I think it's very quick. I think it's probably one of the scariest things is seeing the proliferation of AI in the way it is right now, especially without any, I wouldn't say constraints, any verification, even with RAG in place. You don't know what the LLMs or the AI behind it is doing to manipulate it to get the answer. If you know the answer, most of the times you don't need to ask the question because you know the answer already. Where I find it helps the most is when I know the answer, there's a gap like coding sometimes, and I get it to do that. But I've been using it for searches. I've been using DeepSeek for search. I've been using Llama for searches and things like that. And you can see the difference in all of them about what you can search for and do. They're all constrained in some way. The ones that we have right now available to us, not recognizably so, but DeepSeek, absolutely. I love it though. It is like running ChatGPT on my box here, but you just got to be working within those constraints. I worry about what I don't know about it, what's decided. So yeah.
So there's a lot here with DeepSeek, and I think one of those is separating the app, DeepSeek app, versus the LLM and the model, which has been released as open source. But if you're running it locally, obviously you can play with it. But the app itself, being like TikTok, is data harvesting and sending all your user data back to China. So I think that's part of it making news. But we're kind of not focusing on that at the moment. We might come back to that in a bit. We'll focus on the model and what that means. And there's a couple points here, right, where they say, that they only trained it on 2,000 of the slower NVIDIA cards, where, that's a point of contention. A lot of people believe that, they've got a lot of the high-end NVIDIA cards that just they weren't supposed to be able to have, but they did because of the trade embargo on it. But yeah, people believe they've got a lot more that they're not telling. But that aside, and they're kind of doing the Chinese thing, which is, we'll just undercut everybody on price, right? So, and we'll make everything, just commodity. And so you'll just come to us because it's the cheapest. And, and that's sort of, I think, the view here, that maybe they're doing it that way. But also they did come up with, they came up with some novel ways to make the hardware more efficient, right? Or to use, not needing the super high end hardware, which I think was actually really, really cool, and means that you don't need this super high end $50,000 NVIDIA cards. The last thing, the other big point is, and I want to talk to that one, but that they probably also used ChatGPT's API, and as well maybe Google and Claude to help train their own model. So, but I feel like that's what everybody's doing, and probably whether they want to admit it or not. So, and it kind of goes back to a point that I was trying to make. One one time, I think Van might have spoke to him about this, is like, well, who owns any of this copyrighted stuff, right? So, and, even though there are usage rights for their API, but in the end, like, can you really do anything about them, automating, their own learning through your GPT model? So I don't know. I don't know, Rob, thoughts on any of that, on the way that DeepSeek is changing?
It raises a broader question around the provenance of how a model is trained. And it seems like people are willing to forego understanding how an outcome is calculated or built, if it comes at the right price tag or the right performance profile. I do wonder whether we're going to see the end of people wanting to see the working out in a way. If that's the case, then it opens up a number of problems, some of which we've just mentioned then, is particularly where the material has been taken from people with or without their consent, or whether it's, say, material published under Creative Commons license. What do you do? I mean, most of those things require some form of attribution. How do you do it in this new world?
And that's apparently how they actually got the speed so fast, was they actually stopped attributing it to things.
Right.
And so they just basically said, well, we'll just ignore all that because that slows us down, and we'll just get to the answer. So don't show your work, was basically their, I used to get marks taken off in school for that because I didn't show my work.
And anyone who's worked in a regulated environment would be familiar with the need for things like non-repudiation and auditability, because you are legally to show how you arrived at a decision or a determination. If you've been subject to PCI compliance, you understand the requirements for handling credit card information and bank and financial information. Any industry that deals with sensitive information will find this problematic, I think, in due course, because to be able to deliver some sort of technology that interfaces with that kind of information requires the traceability of how it was handled, how it was stored, how it was transmitted. And I'm not sure we're going entering uncharted territory here if the community at large is willing to say, we don't mind so much how you came up with the output, with the answer. I think we'll find ourselves at odds, at least with some level of due diligence somewhere. It's going to be a brave agency, department, or even commercial enterprise that is okay with skipping that part of the diligence, I think. But that'll be a challenge for 2025.
Yeah, it's going to
and
be
for
lots
us too.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it definitely starts in our territory, the royal we, the enterprise architects of the world, but anyone who is required to understand an end-to-end solution that incorporates AI components is going to need to have some answers for some of these questions, I think, and unless, of course, it happens to cover subject matter that isn't subject to that type of regulation or handling or security. But if we start to see a tightening of privacy, either through legislation or other methods, it's going to come to a head at some point. So whether that means that AI veers into more friendly territory, like consumer goods, consumer applications, where you can provide consent as a user of the technology or product, and it steers clear of the tougher audience, the governments, the defense forces, those type of things. Be interesting to watch.
Think it goes to what are people actually going to be using? I mean, they're using AI and everything, right? But right now I'm seeing tons in the image generation, social media stuff, posts and things, which it's just gone nuts. Where you kind of go, I was off social media for several years, and then just joined back again, and I'm going, what is all this AI generated crap in the feed? And it's pretty crazy to see how that's taken over. And to me, my biggest thing for 2025 is I think coding it's gonna be a massive leap there. And it's funny because just before we got on here, I just got an email advertisement from a web hosting company saying that, hey, we've got something new about to launch, and it's basically going to be write your own application using their new AI coding model. And I think this is going to be the next big thing. I think in the next 6 months, we're going to see lots of AI generated applications that people are going to be putting out. And it's going to, the low code is going to be no more. It's going to be AI code, Van, you're down in the weeds of the AI stuff. You love to play with this. What's your take? But we can't hear you.
We've lost your audio.
No, you've muted yourself.
Muted myself because of the noise in the background. We've got kids playing games in the background right now. Luckily, I've got high-speed internet now. So, hey, look, Rob, the problem we have is that the legislation, policy, governance, all the things that would put limits on software, things like that, it's not even playing catch up. It's not even the same ballpark. Mm-hmm. It's in the next suburb and decelerating faster than you can imagine. I hate to use the term agile. I can't use the term agile. We're really faster with how we evaluate and maintain. What's the word I'm looking for? Maintain the honesty of the information we're actually utilizing and getting.
The integrity.
And that's difficult in AI because it's the black box. And the thing about DeepSeek that I do like the idea about is an open model. You can go and check the weights if you want to. Derive how it works beyond me, but there's people that can do that. But can you imagine one of the commercial ones? I'm using commercial one right now. I'm not asking them for what they've got in the background. But I do evaluate it based upon what I know, and I go research first, then ask the question and ask to fill gaps, especially using coding. Like I said, we can't put limits on innovation in many cases, and especially here, because we can't parameterize, we can't put constraints on it at all. You either switch it off or it's on. Once it's on, it's on. One of the things that DeepSeek's shown me specifically, I don't know about you guys, is you can put some serious censorship into it. Right? It'll answer stuff about Joe Biden, but Xi Jinping, who's been around a lot longer than Joe Biden, nah. It says, I respectfully say that I can't do stuff like that. That is fine if you're going to ask questions and you understand that that's what it's about. I'm doing it in coding now, and it's pretty successful. If I ask it to help me code, and I give it the right prompt, the prompt is similar to one I give to ChatGPT when I'm using that, but it's actually giving me compilable results more often than I'd say I would expect it to. So I freely use for that and say, well, what can go wrong with the program? It's not writing like backdoor code in it. I can check every single bit of it. But if I'm going to ask the question that requires historical analysis or representation, then it ain't going to be the one I go to. It's up for that. Specific use cases, tick them off. The ones that it doesn't do, off you go. We don't have those specific use cases yet, I don't think. Everybody's sort of like talking about them. They say this, this, and this, but we don't have any patterns of what those use cases look like. And that's one of the things that we can do, because once you've got a pattern, as you know, you can just plug things into that pattern as you go. But we're not I've not seen development of those patterns to a degree where you can actually use it rapidly to place it over an AI and go, yes, 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 no. There's some things happening out there, that there's some companies, that I've been talking to, been on panels with and stuff like that, who are looking at, trust, how to measure trust in AIs. But there again, they haven't exposed their algorithms, have they? So you don't know what parameters they're using for that. So I think we need to be developing, as EAs, we need to be developing the thought process, which is a lot faster than sitting down, go through gate 1, gate 2, gate 3, You just got to bypass that, use a pattern that fits to. What's that look like? Yeah, safe, go.
Yeah.
Safe for
I
what
think,
you're trying to do.
yeah. And, getting back to why DeepSeek is so, I guess, making such waves is, like you said, it's open source, and the fact that it, once it's distilled down, you can run it on commodity hardware, right? So what does this mean? For a person at home or in the enterprise where, okay, you've got this base LLM that is actually really small. It's for the distilled models, it's 4 gigs, 4 gigs of RAM. Like, you can run this on a laptop. Um, you're not expecting instantaneous results, but you get it within a few seconds. And like, that's plenty fast enough for an offline tool. But okay, so if you're going to then add in, your company data, right? So then this really makes that, personalized AI, company AI offline a lot more feasible. And I think maybe that's why Microsoft might be a little bit scared, or trying to embed with it, because all of a sudden they want everything in their cloud, because then they could give you their, Microsoft. Oh yeah, we're adding, we're gonna help you with your own data, and make all your data searchable and stuff. Where, hey, I could end up doing this myself, because you actually don't need thousands of servers to do this. So I think in some ways this has really thrown the cloud, needing that cloud AI model, around, and maybe that's what's scaring the financial markets around NVIDIA and stuff, because you don't need now $100,000 NVIDIA server to run these sort of things in your data center.
Yeah, well, we've only got the word of what they've said on that, really, so far, unless you've found something else.
No. But what I'm saying is, once you've got a decent base model, you don't need, you're going to use that as your base, right? And then you can add your own data to it, right?
Come back to how it's like, what constraints does it have, right? I think so it's like anything else that you do when you build software, right? You build a little component that works really well, then you add to it. So you don't have to retest that component. You can retest the next one, because that one works. Test the next one, because the previous stuff works. Same thing, when you're developing software, you've got your branches, you've got your main branch, your sub branch, blah, blah, blah. You join up, you test them, right? But LLMs, when you're going to build these things, or AIs, when you're going to build these things, what are you testing? Testing an invariant.
Can I take a slightly different view here? I think this is really interesting, and this is probably going to be the focal point of 2025. No, this is what I said at the start. The scary thing, I think, here is that if more of the common use cases work with low-profile local LLMs, then the need for the big scale-out cloud might become more niche. And I suspect it'll always be there, but the scary scenario is, hey, this runs well enough for the 10 things that I like to do with it, and I don't need to have fancy hardware, and I can just run on my laptop. That scenario is probably going to worry a lot of people that have got a lot of money invested in this already, who did so on the basis that it needs hyperscale cloud to power it, to find out, hang on, most people, particularly, say, the common use cases, don't actually fit that model. It'd be interesting to see if that turns out to be true. I think it's a bit too early to make a call in that area, but it's and I'm really interested in the offline, because I like to be able to unplug things. One of the disadvantages of living in an area that has less than ideal infrastructure means that I can't rely all the time on high speed, low latency connections to the cloud or elsewhere. So my interest is always on something that I can temporarily or fully run offline. And what I've seen so far has been great. I mean, I found out that the server rack and other things that I have here the CPUs aren't supported on the modern runtimes, which is fun development. But, that's my fault for not investing more recently. But even I'm running Snapdragon, the ARM processor Windows Dev Kit, and it runs relatively okay for something that isn't particularly soupy. It was less than $1,000 delivered. A couple of clicks of a button and I have a model up and running.
Yeah.
That's pretty
to
exciting.
me, this is the going from encyclopedias. And if you remember when encyclopedias, you went to you had a DVD, Microsoft didn't card a DVD or something like that. If you're that old and remember, and so you kind of had that jump, and this is now the next step, right? So it's kind of, well, now you have. Then we went to Google. Well, okay, you've got the search, but this is now. Well, you don't have to search and click. It's like it's basically your whole encyclopedia, now in this file, and that's just going to get. To me, these LLMs are going to get more efficient and distilled down, and they're going to be put in phones, and all computers. They're already there, but and it's just going to continue to grow. And I think, Van, I guess the point against what you were trying to make is, what is it distilled on? I'm like, right now, I don't think it matters because of the pace at which other open source, because we don't talk about DeepSeek only, there's other open source models coming out, and they're getting better and better, and it's just going to push everyone else to continue to push.
Yes,
it's unstoppable at the moment.
Basically, that's what I'm saying. It's unstoppable. We need to get faster with knowing when to use what and how. Right? Every talk about LLMs right now, right? That's one small corner of the entire AI space. Yeah? One small corner, but it's the most marketable because it's in your face all the time. You start when you guys go to Hugging Face, 700,000 odd models and flying.
I was about to say it's 1.3 million models.
Okay, that's my numbers from December. So, but the thing about that is just note about Hugging Face, right? A lot of those models are fine tuning of previous models, just like what we're talking about there. So, is a fine tuned model a new model?
Yeah.
And by all intents and purposes, I would say yeah, because it's actually fine tuned on data which has either extended its capabilities or refined its capabilities, made it more focused on certain aspects. And maybe sitting in China right now, there's a DeepSeek, which is the full-blown thing, which is much better than DeepSeek we're getting, but this is the fine-tuned version for the release to us. Maybe there is. We don't know.
Export version.
There is. And there is, like I said, there's on Hugging Face, there's the 70 or there's a full R1 download that's 100 gigs or something versus the distilled down 4 gig one,
So here's the thing. Is that the full one? Who knows? We'll use it, we'll play with it, we'll refine it. And one of the things I've been looking at since we spoke about putting it up there is actually looking at refining it. What are the sort of questions that were used to define this one versus what we're going to refine? I've been thinking about the approach we could use to do something like that, which we can talk about offline from here. But really what it comes down to is asking a set of prompts and giving the appropriate responses for those prompts. And it's a long list of them, right? Why can't we try that out? Well, the reason why is we just don't have time. It just takes time and it takes effort to actually do. However, one of the other things I read was that they may have used other LLMs to derive this LLM. So they're asking questions about this stuff here, right?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Do you ever get the sense that we're on the same journey we were with package management and package dependencies?
Yes.
Where you end up with literally thousands of them as part of a solution, and we never had a great answer for that.
And the same thing with API development, right? APIs solve everything. But you end up having UDDI back in the 2090s. It's back again as an API management framework.
Sure.
You want to talk about it? But yeah, we end up now having millions of APIs. One does plus, one does +1, one does +2, one does +3, one does +4. You call the API you need. And also you've got a library of APIs, 10 million APIs, and you need API manager. Same thing here. It's the same proliferation of capability across the board. Hugging Face, perfect example. The LLM argument, another example. I'm not saying don't use them, not saying don't, they're not great, but let's know their parameters, what they're good for, and use them where they should be used, and not for everything. Like those ones you're talking about, the ones like they can go into devices. I know an organization right now that can pump it to a camera. One camera can look for an active shooter, another camera can look for the type of gun they're using, another camera can look at their shoes, another camera can work out where they've come from, another camera can do this, all as one mesh of AI. And they can pump those things into cameras and replace them remotely as well. So,
and I mentioned that intentionally because I think most people would probably be aware that IoT doesn't have the best track record in terms of its security. And so now I'm seeing two problems.
Yeah. Look, I think the vast majority of people don't care.
No,
frankly,
they don't.
Right?
They don't. Yeah,
they don't care. And it's, I do. I know that.
I do.
It's the hell out of me. But they don't care. They're posting themselves up everywhere like we are. Right, our faces are all over the American and Chinese facial recognition databases right now.
It's like home routers when they were shipped from the factory with default and no home user changed. Most didn't change them, and people could connect to the Wi-Fi and then just instantly get admin on the router and do whatever they liked. This on math is an interesting proposition.
Yeah, but I don't reckon if you went to a group of people just out there and you said, okay, how many people you have changed your router passwords? And we'd be the only three putting our hands up. You know what I mean? Nobody cares.
They wouldn't even know how to log in. Yeah.
Where the manufacturer has actually preceded it with a random value, which was the industry's attempt to try to respond to that criticism. But I don't know how widespread that was. I think.
Well, I know
it went into law in California, and that actually forced a lot of manufacturers to do something. Because California does a lot of crazy, stupid things, but every once in a while they get one good one through. But
the problem is
that's pretty good.
The rate that this is developing and how slow legal changes take to come about. I think the horse will have bolted long before someone comes along and says, hey, you can't deploy something patently unsafe. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to necessarily do much about
it. There's money to be made in that. We can't change it. That's why I like the idea that we can run things locally and have I guess, now you've got citizen scientists, you've got citizen AI.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Models. Now, anybody can download this and they've got a free encyclopedia or free LLM. Well, I don't have to sign up for ChatGPT or anything else. I can just download this and I've got the world at my fingertips. No subscription.
So I'm trying to rag up DeepSeek at the moment.
Yes.
They can rag it easily with ChatGPT, but I'm trying to rag it up now. I've got a nice corpus of information to try against my stuff from my PhD attempt days. So a couple of thousand PDFs that I've still got sitting there. Not using anything else and doesn't go anywhere else. So it's still private. But yeah, I'm going to see what it can do because I'm really interested to see, even with those constraints on it, what it can do with RAG, because ChatGPT flies with this stuff, and it gives you really, really good answers for your specific questions. And I'm going to see this this Google one that you just talked about, the note thing.
Yeah, Notebook LM. Yeah.
Notebook LM. I'm definitely going to pull that one up and see what that does, because one of the things when you're even trying to process all this information is find the patterns that you're looking for. And so I use ChatGPT, for instance, for looking across articles, multiple articles at a time, because there's so much to read, and saying, okay, is there any pattern in that? Is there any commonality? And it'll come back and say, yeah, this one's kind of related to that. And so you can actually embed that concept when you're trying to train your own AI, your own machine learning thing, or trying to refine your own AI, in that you can have ChatGPT in an agentic process. Look at what I do is I say, look at this conclusion. This is the article I like. And okay, now for every article that you get, I pump it up to ChatGPT, say, is it like that one? And it comes and goes, yeah, sort of. This is where it's common. No, it's not. And this is why. And you can put that back into your prompt sequence, and it can generate the prompts for you too if you do it carefully. I'm not that good with it because none of my stuff's worked yet, but that idea that you got this extra brain to do that for you is kind of cool.
What does this mean for cybersecurity hackers that might be able to get access to a whole bunch of company data?
Yeah, it's a new type of hacking. Imagine that, a new type of company hacking. You've got a prompt set in front of their RAG system, their AI, and the next thing you know, it's telling you that black is white, white is black, and that tea tastes like what's that? Passion fruit and peppermint.
Yeah, peppermint, yeah. But it used to take, you have to spend hours and hours to comb through documents. If you just not saying. So yeah, but like even if you were just trying to find something, because the search, just like Windows search and stuff was never that great. But now, man, if you could pop all that into LLM, like your whole company's file server there. Yeah.
Welcome to Copilot. Microsoft Copilot, I've got to say, is fantastic at that. You open it up onto your business's document library or your business's storage environment, without any limitations. It's dangerous, but even with limitations, it's dangerous. But you open it up on that, and all of a sudden you're doing, when in SharePoint you can search or whatever it is, you can search and it just goes bleh, vomit. You can ask for a synopsis of what you're looking for, and it'll give you a nice synopsis. And I've got to say, I find it pretty damn close for what I'd write too. It's like, wow, okay, that is good. It can actually assimilate information and then process it and then give you a good overview of what you're reading. And then you can pick out, because it also puts in the reference points of the articles from the RAG process. So you can sort of say, oh, where did this sort of idea come from? Oh, there, click. Read it yourself. And sure enough, it's pretty much most of the time, in fact, a high percentage of the time, good. It's a reference point. It's dangerous because it makes life easy.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. AI generated content at work. Does anybody care? So, so if someone was to use that as part of their work and they're putting together presentations or documents and stuff, and and they say, oh yeah, well, I've used ChatGPT or whatever else to help me write this. Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? Like, what do companies care? Or it's just like, well, if you got it done faster, great. I don't know.
So what if a PA writes an executive's summary paper for them? Is that any different to an AI writing it for you?
Right. Yeah.
I don't think so. I would worry though, because AIs can go, gee whiz, this is pink apples. No, they're red apples. They're pink apples. They can make things up sometimes if you don't have the right prompt. And if you're using one of the sort of like commercial fronting ones, but if you can change the parameters on it, how it actually responds to you, and and put the correct RAG in front of it to allow it to actually respond to you within the constraints that you want it to respond, then I'm okay with that. As long as the AI itself can be trusted, which I'm not okay with.
You've got to expect that someone producing some sort of work has read and understood the material.
Really?
And then it's really not much of a distinction between how they generate it as to they are the one warranting that it's correct. So if it's wrong, responsibility lies with the person who said, here's my work, and not with the thing that made the work. I mean, it's not too distinct from a programmer using automation or T4 templates to generate code. If there's a problem with the template or with whatever, it's the person who was responsible for doing the work that is held accountable for it, not a bug in the template necessarily.
Good point. So then there's a little question there. I think we were going to talk about it later, but I'm bringing it up now. So if the AI does the work and it's unedited by the person between that and the representation of the work, is the AI the producer of the work or the human?
This has come up in AI generated images. Is the AI an author? And we're going to find this is going to be a varied answer depending on which jurisdiction you live in.
It is, yeah.
Copyright laws are different in most markets, and the definition of author is quite distinctly different in many places as well. Yeah. So I don't think there's going to be a straight answer to that question.
Yeah, and my question is, though, if you put in a prompt and AI spits something out, but you claim it as your own, how do they prove that it was AI versus you using something like Photoshop? Right? Because
what if you make modifications to it and then say it's yours? Well, it is an original work now because it isn't just the product of a straight generation. You tweaked it somehow.
Is AI a tool or an entity?
Tool.
So, I think legally that's probably where it's going to fall, is that it's a work product. It's something that helps you deliver something. If you've got
Auto GPT running, sorry to talk over Europe, my bad, apologies. Sure. If you've got Auto GPT running, and you've given it a prompt to start with, you've just literally said, work out how to do X. Yeah? And it sits there and it goes grind. You've given it the right direction. You just said, go down this track and tell me what's at the end of it. At the end of that, it's done all the work. You've only said, go find something in there. Are you still the author? The reason I ask this is very simple. They're teaching machine learning, and let's call them AI systems. Defining AI is just kind of silly right now because everybody thinks of AI as one big blob. But they're teaching them to build rocket engines. And they're saying, okay, these are the things. And then they run the rocket engine model that the AI develops and feed it back to the AI.
Yeah.
Or machine learning, whatever, right? The algorithm. That's it.
Yes.
And at the other end pops a new one, and they try it again. And they set the parameters up to do this and the other, measure volume to thrust to coolant to shape. And out the other end comes this thing which a human would never develop. Maybe an ant would, or an octopus, but a human wouldn't. Is the AI the author of that, or is it the person that wrote it, or is it the person that said, this is what to do to start with?
I don't think we have a sufficient framework to make that call.
Are we too human-centric?
Well, I think we are.
I mean, I think, you're not going to have an AI own anything, right? So it's either a company, and the company that sponsored the LLM, or it's a person, right? So, because legally that's the only thing that we have as entities that can own anything. Women can own stuff too now. So
that's a reason. And the scary thing there is that, not too long ago, we had people who couldn't own anything and had to be owned by other people. There are now people who can own their things as well. So we're really early on the AI track, but you can see at the level of development, the release of these things, the capabilities of these exponential capabilities of these things, the ChatGPT 3.5 to ChatGPT 0.1, holy cruds. Light and day, right? DeepSeek versus, I don't know, give me one. Llama? Yeah. Light years away. Majority of the things on Hugging Face, I haven't tested all of them, but the random ones I have tested, the ones that they've done refinements on, not a light to DeepSeek. Maybe soon, maybe now. But
maybe soon. I think Alibaba said that they've just released an updated version of theirs, that's now as good as DeepSeek. But I'm not saying it is or not. But it's just, I think in the next 3 to 4 months, you're going to see a whole bunch that are going to be.
How much power are they using? I mean, just on my front here with my little box here, it's a 7900 XTX. It's a reasonable CPU, but when I'm trying to run some of these models and trying to do refining or something, some of these models from Hugging Face, the thing heats and grinds like a maniac. So I can imagine the rows and rows of these things. That's using power. Our power bill's huge, but
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
because of the machine. But how much power are they actually using? Why hasn't Elon Musk or anybody else created a data center in space with massive solar panels and gone?
Believe me, they're looking at all of that. But
I know, but why is,
but this is why they're trying to get all these new nuclear the small scale nuclear plants to power their AI. Yeah, so they're in the US.
So
They've this technology has been around for a long time for the small. They just never can get any approval to actually build one.
there's no commercial gain in it, probably. Now there is.
Well, the environmental agencies would never let them build it, and people say, I don't want nuclear in my area, so we're gonna oppose it. But that's why. I mean, the problem is, expense has been a little bit factor, but you've got most of these nuclear plants have been around since the 70s. So, in the U.S., I think there hasn't been a new one built in 30-something years, So it's still on this very old technology, and they have, newer technologies to make them much more efficient and much safer and all that, but they can't build them. I mean, if you look at what's happening with AI, that set speed is like, well, I'm sure we could build really good, safe nuclear plants, now after 30 years of technology advancements, and hey, put it in an AI, and I'm sure we'll have some really good advancements in a few years. But it's just the fact to be able to build it. But the point of the matter is the power. And yes, you're right. This is why they're, to build these data centers, they're going, we can't build a data center unless we have, massive power that can power it. And that's why they're looking at partnering with these new nuclear companies and looking at all the other options, because we're talking about 100,000 GPUs and
are we? Because DeepSeek supposedly has shown us that you don't need that. Here's the question: is like they were.
Which one do you believe?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. The likes of DeepSeek are here now. They're doing this thing.
Well, but you can, even if you take the DeepSeek and take it at face value and say, okay, they only use 2,000, but they took some shortcuts. So do you care that they took shortcuts and they're not, checking the work and attributing it every step of the way and showing all that, and not using human refinement or anything else like that? Do you care? Do
Personally,
we care?
I don't.
I know. So this
is many people will, because it's producing an outcome that's desired by many people, and they're going to start saying, yeah, okay, that's a trade-off they're willing to live with.
And I'm using it for coding mainly, not actually research. And the coding space is like, we've all been, that's our bread and butter. That's what we do all the time, did all the time. But I wouldn't use it for searching something up. That's for sure.
No.
I wouldn't trust to do that for me.
Yeah. But I think, coding to me is one of the perfect applications of this stuff. It's like, hey, I want, got an open source software, that you want to use, and you want to create a new plugin for it. I'm like, and I didn't want to have to go in and code it, but hey, if I could get, one of the LLMs to code me that plugin, then awesome.
Do most of the grunt work. I mean, even if you do the finishing work, if it's able to take hours out of a task by giving you something that's dependable enough, that has decent enough quality, you'd be mad not to. I mean, we've been doing that for 20 years, or probably longer, using code generation techniques to produce boilerplate code. This is a natural evolution, which is great, but I think there'll still be a step where someone has to slightly tailor it. And we might end up at some sort of diminished returns at some point where we go, this is good enough. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen anytime soon, because we're still in a growth phase, but we might get to a point where we go, this is dependable, reliable, it's in use, it's been battle tested, hardened, we understand its profile. comes back to those use cases. If we work out the most common, the most attractive use cases, and they're all answered, then we start just focusing on niche. And whether that's this year or later, I'm not sure, but I suspect that's where we're heading. I mean, I personally like the reduction in power overheads for this.
Yeah.
If it's trending in that direction, I'm a big fan.
And it's like, well, and Van, you can speak to this probably more than I can, but the difference between training a model and just running the model, right? You know,
Right.
What you need to train it is huge, but what you need to run it is a lot smaller. You know, what do you do? You know, Tesla or sorry, it was Twitter, Elon Musk. What's his XAI or whatever? And they just built this Grok. Yeah, so they've built this whole new data center with this massive NVIDIA cluster. And they put it together in like 3 months, you know, and basically bought everything that NVIDIA had for that quarter, something crazy like that. But once they train it, you know, I guess you're just going to go off and train it again. I mean, what do you do with all that hardware? Like, I mean, does it sit there and...
I feel silly. I've never asked the question.
You know, just built this and you run. I mean, I guess you're just continually going to refine it and do it again. I don't know, but you know,
if you got it exposed, you know, you're going to want to use that for that, because the way they chunk things up to run them, because the data set they're going against is, God, it's huge compared to anything we've dealt with before. I think that's what I don't think people are thinking about enough, is like the data set that they're using. We've never in the history of computing or humans seen that amount of information. If you think about this in this way, though, YouTube puts on, I think when they started, they said, "Oh, our main aim is to get one year a day." I think they do 1 year a second now in video content that's going up there. So they're generating content of a specific type and genre all the time. That can be what they do with AI is taking that in and processing it and generating something which can respond to it in a coherent way. So I don't see that actually ever stopping.
Yeah.
I see it getting more and more real time.
Mm-hmm.
Really. I mean, what you're not seeing yet in YouTube, for instance, is as the video is being generated, you know, accurate transcription, but also free compilation of themes and, you know, ideas and stuff like, you know, maybe even censorship of violent things later on, but nothing's happening in real time yet. So I think those things are going to happen. Deepseek rethinking the problem, not looking at brute force solutions, but perhaps rethinking the problem may speed things up again. Maybe. But there again, you don't know, because you don't know what they've actually done at this point.
With ChatGPT, does it search news as well, like latest headlines?
Yeah, I can point it at a website and say...
well, not without pointing it. I mean, if you just say, hey, what's the latest headline, you know...
You can do stuff like that. So what's the latest headline around the world?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was primed into real-time stuff.
It wasn't. Right? It wasn't. And it can do automatic searching of the web if you have the prompt in such a way that makes it go, yeah, I should do that. So prior to, there was a point in time when they couldn't do that. They didn't allow that to happen. But now, I can't remember when it started. You can do that. It's also got a memory now. You know, ChatGPT's had a memory, and it wasn't really well advertised. And I only worked it out, and it started repeating back to me in a chat I was having with it about something totally other, something which I had another chat about similar thing, but said, no, this is this, it's not that. And in this one here, I'd said something along the lines of, this is that. And he said, no, it's this. And I went, no, it is too. And I thought, oh, you're very smart. And I asked it, how did you work that out? I said, I've got a memory now. Wait, what? And I said, what? And so it brought up the page of its memory and said, yeah, read that. So I went, okay. And yeah, sure enough, it's got a memory that you can clear, you know, as you go forward. But it's literally, yeah, they're adding these bits to it all the time. And I think that's part when you say, what are they going to use the power for? these things like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't just take a page and say, give me that. It has to go through a process where you take the content of whatever it is you're looking at, tokenize it, wrap it up into some, let's call them tables for now. Yeah, the vector databases and the like, and then run the LLM over that, then pass it through an encoder, run the LLM over that, decode the whole stuff, bring it back out and go, bleh. That takes power. That takes storage. And in ChatGPT, you've got, I think is it 15 gig? I have to go back and ask it, well, how much space you have. But you can actually ask it certain things about how it's working, and they sound kind of true. And then you read the material of what the OpenAI says, and yeah, it is true. So they haven't sort of cut that out and said, oh no, you can't know that. I think it don't tell you, but things like how it's working, you can ask it. And it used to say, oh, it's too complex. I can't do this. I can't do that. And as your prompting gets more and more capable, you can get it to work around those, oh no, I can't tell you that, with different approaches. But even that has become more refined. It's now smarter to know that there's a causative trail that you're going down. And because you're asking this question now, it's a high likelihood you're going to ask it to do something really nefarious later on. And it goes, I gotcha. No, yeah, I can't answer that question. I think you have to find another way around and get there. But that's half the fun of trying to do that, really. You spend too much time with these things, I tell you what. Too much time.
Well, that goes to, if you're trying to do something nefarious and you've got, like, what does it know? So what, where has it gotten all this data that you can actually find something bad in it, So I don't know, I'm just thinking if you wanted to build something that explodes, how's it, where does that data come from?
Well, it has to have the data there. I mean, like it's not like people have said,
no, I know, but like are they grabbing these from all,
Well,
are you thinking, does it have the knowledge of the anarchist cookbook?
Yeah.
Degree, right? And who knows?
Yeah. Or did it just, have a whole bunch of chemistry, text put into it? And I don't know if it knows chemistry. I haven't tried it, but, and then just, somewhere in the chemistry textbook, oh, you put this and this together and it's going to do, explode or do something. And, maybe it knows that. I don't know. But, I guess, who's curating all the data that's put into these things? And unfortunately, I don't want the one that's been trained on social media.
But wasn't there one? So I remember this vaguely, that I don't think it was Microsoft's one or something, that when they switched it on, it was just horrid. Telling people to kill themselves or something like that.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember this, and then somebody came around and said, no, it's your
Google
fault because...
one too. Yeah.
And they had to switch it off because it was actually just horrible. They said, that's because you're horrible on social media or something along those lines.
Yeah. And I think one was, the super glue or glue on a pizza or something. And it came from some Reddit post, that someone had posted as a joke. But, I think it was Google's when it first came out, when, somebody asked it for like a recipe for a pizza or something, like referred to this joke on Reddit. Yeah.
There was that link I sent out at the time about that supermarket chain in New Zealand that were using an AI, where people could give it ingredients and it would give them recipes as part of a kind of, cost of living type solution. You make meals out of things you have, and it had an unfortunate tendency to generate recipes that would include toxins and chemicals that would kill someone for consuming the meal. Thus revealing that they hadn't given a limitation of, you don't suggest things that will kill humans or something.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Who is curating it? Sorry. When you were talking about that, I was thinking, the problem isn't so much who's curating it, but what they what they think they're doing. So think about this, right? If for training, I think ChatGPT, again, I should have come prepared. They got to remember this. They've got rooms full of people within Southeast Asia on low wages saying that's a good thing, that's a bad thing. Coming down and getting PTSD and stuff like that, and stuff they're looking at, watching, whatever it is, trying to change it. So who exactly is training it, and what are we getting out of it? Are we getting it back again? Are we getting censorship out of it? Well, in DeepSeek, yes, we are. In ChatGPT, are we? Yes, but we don't know what it is to a large scale, I think.
And does it matter?
Yeah. Who does it matter to, and does it matter is always, we come back down to that. Who cares? People use it, they don't care. Yeah. It's kind of sad. You know, what can you talk over? Because there's nothing else to talk about.
Because, you know, if I never use DeepSeek for asking it about China, you know, does it matter? I don't want to ask it anything political or anything, you know. I just, you know, I mean, I guess they could change it and, you know, and say, if I say, you know, what is the best camera, and they're going to probably point me to some Chinese camera, but yeah, maybe, I don't know, but, you know, I don't think I'm asking those type of questions, but maybe some people will. So, you know, I guess, like you said earlier, you know, it depends on the context, you know, does it matter in that context if they're doing that? But, and I think just the cheapness, the freeness, the portability that it now provides, and not only DeepSeek, but it's going to be lots of others that come after it. And I think to that point is ChatGPT. I think the scary thing for them is that, well, you know, if other LLMs are getting trained off of its data as well and improved, you know, can you stop that? Because once it's out there,
how would you train it off its data? Right? You can train it off its interaction, but you can't snip the direct data out.
Well, not the direct data, no, but I think they use it to improve. I mean, that's the view that DeepSeek used ChatGPT and others to improve its.
Yeah, but again,
I'm not sure exactly how technically, but
I find it,
you know,
I find it strange that comes straight out of the likes of OpenAI, going, "Oh, dear us, you know, they're not as good as us because they use us to train them."
We don't even know they might have a bias or some sort of agenda in making those statements.
Why would they have a bias?
Yeah, but I think that it's sort of a valid question, because, you know, I don't think that you can stop that, because, you know, anybody could just be plugging into all these LLMs and, you know, typing it, you know, getting as many different answers as possible, and basically distilling that data down, right? Using other LLMs, you know, to do it, and then, you know, you're getting a shortcut.
Train an LLM off generated material from another
LLM, yeah.
So see why.
Will it be as good?
Well, you know,
does it matter?
Question, isn't it? Does it degrade in quality because it's going through several generations from whatever the original material was? And is it distorting? I mean, who knows? That's the issue with a lack of provenance, is you don't understand where it originated from and what's happened to that information since it was originally ingested somewhere, and where it is now. Where are you using it?
Yeah, but it comes back to Christian's thing as well, is, do people care? You know, what do they actually care about when they're using the AI? Let's talk about LLMs, right? What do they care about? There was a point in time when I was reading that people are using it to, remember Eliza, the program Eliza?
Yes.
Yes, you know, it was written by a linguist, right? So what it did was just a straightforward linguistic algorithm that looked for specific positions, I think it was, within sentence structure. So you type something, it would go, "I feel sad," and it would go, "Why do you?" And then it'd say, "Because of this." Tell me more about that. So basically very simple responses. But when it was released, just into I think it was the campus computer, people were just logging on to talk to it, interact with it. So bit of social moroseness here. As we're getting more and more disconnected from each other electronically, people are using these things to talk to feel better about themselves, not about themselves, but in themselves, to release that sort of. So do they care about it? What it's doing? So no, as long as it tries to help them feel better. So as we're going forward, more and more forward, and we've got generations coming out which never really go outside anymore. Sorry, I'm sounding like an old man now. But, living with electronics, they're going to be exposed to this more. They don't care that they're pushing their data out there 99% of the time for where it goes. They just want to see benefit to them in their specific cases. So when it comes down to it, we're dying, and they're coming in. So very shortly, it's not going to be anybody to worry about the fact that, can you actually trust what it's saying to you? Who's actually giving the data to actually work on? And where is it steering as you're going forward? Right? Let's look at the algorithms currently in social media. Just sends you what you really want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, then you get the
spending, fact checking, and so forth that we've seen since the new year.
Well, I think it's more the echo chamber, right? So once you've kind of dialed into a particular profile, or the algorithm has you in a particular profile, that's all you see, right?
Yes.
There's nothing else, and so you're constantly getting this echo chamber of stuff, and you're not broadening. And actually, and unfortunately, the algorithm actually paints you, into more narrow every time.
It's called confirmation bias, right? You just want to see what you want to see and believe what you want to believe. And in the end there, you see nothing of contradictory terms of what you want to do. So AI will just be smarter about it. It'll be more subtle about it. It'll be more capable with it. But people won't be prompted to ask themselves. I mean, I'd love it to, maybe I wouldn't, because if I'm seriously doing something, I wouldn't want to pop out something about rabbits or something like that. And just tell me about, how is your data sync actually connects to tenancies or something like that, Not like, oh, by the way, do you know this about rabbits? What I'm saying is, you wanted to do specific things for a specific outcome that you're trying to drive. Might not know what the outcome is. When we come down to it, getting all that is north and stuff, it's still a tool. And if they don't teach you how to use a tool, or you're not interested in learning how to use a tool, it's a dangerous tool. So, as we're going forward, do people care? No. Why? They're not taught anything about it to be able to care. And same with all these other things. Because the fact that it's so pervasive, and because it's people like us talking about it and not the people that are actually using it the most, they don't care. But maybe they should they care? I think they should, but am I being stupid?
Sure.
I don't think so.
There was a study conducted last year, I think it was, where some experts were given some sort of topic they had to describe, and they also asked an LLM to do the same thing. The LLM produced something that was wrong, and the experts producing it was correct. They put it in front of the ordinary layperson, and the majority of people actually thought that it was the LLM generated answer that was correct. And the reason was because it was so persuasive. The language was so confident in its answer that the people assumed it was the correct answer. And that is going to be a big problem, because that's how people are wired to see that someone presenting a confident answer is likely to be correct.
Yes. And tariffs are good for
the
you.
Power of LLMs being able to write very clearly in accessible language that can be coached as well is a real problem.
That's a really good point. Very good point by persuasive. Do you know that LLMs, this is all my findings, you guys can go try it out yourself, they actually have an intrinsic bias towards pleasing you with an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you tell it explicitly that if you don't know something, tell me you don't know. Right? In fact, say these words, I don't know. You tell it that, it will go and make stuff up like you wouldn't believe. Right? It'll just go off, and it will sound coherent, and will sound
like R's in strawberry, that sort of territory.
Things like that. Yeah. It's amazing. once you realize that and you can tell it that, you'll find a lot of the times, I don't know, I can't work that out. But then I switch it off because it just gets a bit boring after a while. I just read through it and go, yeah, ignore that. But it's a good point. It can be, yeah, it's got all that all that capability to reference and regurgitate really persuasive answers, which brings me to some of history's really persuasive politicians. Yeah. Anyway, won't go down that track because we can't talk about those things on air.
I think there's a professional liability there too, because most seasoned people don't arrive at a super confident outcome, because we know from experience that there are many things, many variables that we have to deal with. And so giving a singular answer or giving someone something that you're fully confident with is pretty rare. There's always various conditions, risks, etc., that affect something. So I think we're always providing an outcome that is somewhat supported by some assumptions or some constraints or risks or whatever. And so how we tend to present it is a little more cautious, a little more reserved, and we're going to be competing with something that gives a different answer but is very confident or comes across very confident in the outcomes that it's reached. And putting in front of someone, let's say they're a C-level executive, for example, and they see one side answers their question and supports the position that they have, or that the conclusion they may perhaps want to reach. And then there's the seasoned architect saying, well, maybe.
Yeah. I think we almost come full circle now. We're back to that. The initial thing is, would you let AI or say an LLM help you write something to be more persuasive?
Which is where I'd like to see people taking ownership of the end product and saying, although I've used tools and AI to assist, I have reviewed the material and believe that it is an accurate outcome, an effective, viable work product reviewed and fact-checked or sanity checked, whatever kind of QA you'd like to put across it, but to warrant it as being appropriate. And even perhaps disclosing how material was built might be a step in the right direction there. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens and whether that creates mistrust in work product or not. And people look at it and go, well, hang on, no, what model did you use to generate this? We're too early to tell how this is going to pan out.
Just don't tell.
Well, hey, look, and there's a difference between public sector and private sector use of AI as well that we haven't sort of touched on yet, because I think the pressures on private sector to actually change rapidly to stay relevant don't affect. They do indirectly, aren't the same for public sector to be safe. And so we're working a lot in the public sector more than anything else. And so we are more attuned to, is that a safe thing to do? A, with public money, B, with the people around you that need to be cared for, because we all work in those sorts of spaces. But in the private sector is, hell no, let's get it done fast, right? Get out there, get something out there, and then change it later in case it goes wrong. That was okay when you were doing straightforward, CIS, PAS, those sort of things. But now that thing could be helping the doctor make a decision. Could be advising somebody whether they get in America it would be Social Security check, over here it would be Centrelink or something like that. They could be doing that. Something comes to mind, but I'm not going to talk about it on air.
Don't say it.
I won't say it. It's a sore point. But those are when we're looking at like that, we're sitting over here on the side here trying to say we're safe, but we've got the other side saying, no, let's just do it. Let's just do it and see what happens. And I don't know about you, but even though I see the relevance of that attitude in certain aspects, I don't see it as much as a relevant thing to do when you're trying to care for people in a healthcare or social care setting. So here again, we come down to the question of which use cases and what sort of AI for that use case is relevant. Would you use DeepSeek right now because you're going to have it in Azure and you're going to pump it out of Microsoft? or use Microsoft Copilot or whatever for any of these. They're out there right now. Copilot's being used in various different places. Not where I'm at right now.
Including public sector.
But we can't stop it. But what can we do to make it safer? Because others aren't going to think about it. We've got to think about it, right? Because if we do get it right, they'll never know. If we get it wrong, they'll all know. Those are some serious questions to ask of the sort of work that we're doing. And I think that's something, where we are right now in this country, I don't think we're thinking hard enough about it.
Yeah.
How are we done?
I'll just put this as sort of the last topic out there. Is we talk about cameras and AI and what was actually Night Agent, the TV show, just the second season just kind of came out and kind of hit on this as well as, all the cameras that are being put out there for speeding and whatever else that can then just be pulled together. And, with all the AI, there's no privacy anymore or right to privacy anymore. That if someone was to look you up, have your face, could track you if they had access to any of these, right? And AI can with the facial recognition, which I'm sure is running on all of these, law enforcement systems, even though they might say that they're not, but I know that they are.
Even commercial, like Bunnings and Woolworths,
yep.
And any of those places.
So, there's no real privacy anymore. So I don't know if it's not one of those things where, the AI is going to predict if you're going to commit a crime, and then they send the law enforcement Minority Report. That was the movie.
But there's no what we're doing now.
but it's that you're not going to be able to hide, right? So pretty soon there's going to be so much data, whether you put it out there or give it to these LLMs or not. I think just from public data, and cameras and everything else that, and centralized databases that, the government is gonna have, they're gonna feed all this to AI eventually. So, where does it go? Sorry, I kind of went Minority Report, and that was not.
The real-time aspect comes into play here as well, because if you're not dealing with real-time data, then it's more what happened rather than what's happening. That there's a distinction there between, you looking for a suspect versus they're in custody and you're finding out what they did.
But they are doing that right now. They're looking for active shooters. China's got one that I think the UK's got the bigger surveillance system per population. But look, I don't have the hard facts on that, but they're doing it now. So the horse is bolted. It's just gone, right? And the thing about personal privacy, the right to personal privacy, that's only in the countries that we've lived in, right? What about Japan? Right? What about Korea? What about the other countries around the place? Each one has its own view of what personal privacy is. I find it really strange that the United States, which is supposed to value this, only has it really in HIPAA about personal privacy, not in the general public. Nobody seems to be allowed to have personal privacy there because everybody's in your face of the camera all the time. Right? We don't have it so much here either. We don't have it so much in Australia either. That we don't have the same sort of level of Twitch streamers, whatever they call or kick streamers. What's it? I don't know, crowd streamers running around doing stupid things. Yet. But that's going away as more and more of what happens in the United States starts happening here. But so what? That's by the by. But I do think we have a right to not to have our data consumed by AI or any other medium. If we can. I don't know about you guys. I don't subscribe to social media, Facebook, for instance. I used to. And I don't know if the stuff that I've got there is still there, but I've said delete it. But what's the bet that Meta's llama has not my details in there? Of the pictures and stuff, they would recreate things. Who knows?
And
But we didn't get to say they couldn't use it. And I don't know what at the time in their end user license agreements, I gave my stuff away for that.
That's another symptom of different legal jurisdictions and where the law applies as well. It's a complicated answer, particularly when you're using a service that's international. Even if it's an Australian-based service, the law here has a different application depending on whether you're talking federal or state. States have different laws. They don't necessarily cover the same material. That's just in Australia, but the law and regulation has always been behind. It's going to continue to be way behind. And so that I was really encouraged when certain players were trying to establish ethical boundaries at the onset. I think probably about not quite a decade ago, but started to see Microsoft in particular starting to talk about ethics in AI, ethics in data handling, and have a legislative requirement to do so.
Yeah.
But without that, the stick, it feels like it's mostly going to be a voluntary code or a voluntary practice that you establish your ethics instead of a mandated position.
Didn't the OpenAI guys just all get kicked out, the ethics guys? I think they all either left or got kicked out.
Yeah. And I think any time that starts to hinder innovation, development, or progress, then the friction will inevitably fall on the side that's more progressive. And like we said throughout the conversation, the care factor is probably not going to be applied there either. All I can think of is I wonder whether future liability will be a measure of what happens next as well. Once something bad happens, will that set precedent that creates the stick if there's no legal framework or set of laws or something that apply? Is it going to be that companies get sued out of existence because they didn't take reasonable steps to do something, to establish some parameters and guardrails? What's it going to take? Is it going to need to be a big event, something messy that causes it? I don't know. It wouldn't be the first time technology has been curbed when something has happened and liability has been applied to someone. Harking back to who's the author. Well, who's the liable party is going to be a pretty popular topic, I think, in due course. Van, you mentioned in medicine before. That's going to be interesting to watch as well. If people start to use AI-aided assessments and something goes wrong.
Something goes wrong in the diagnosis or?
Right. Yeah.
Well, they're doing that. I mean, they've done that for ages now. But you're seeing AI get into a lot of places like, clinical noting. There's, in Australia anyway, there's, some stuff happening there. Oracle's got Cerner now, so they're going to use that data. Sorry, shouldn't say that. They may do some things to enhance their capabilities around AI too, probably. It's there already. It's been there for years. A lot of the image AI stuff has been in radiology. We see that a lot. In fact, it's getting better and better and better, I think, because it's actually more machine learning than what we term AI, I guess. And one of the things we do need to have probably an hour-long conversation is what the hell is AI anyway? Because it's just a marketing term. There's a whole heap of stuff in there that has different use cases within the use cases that's applied to, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And building them is different. The way they're trained is different. The way, LLMs are so in front of everybody all the time. That's all they think about. But the vast majority of the stuff either that's doing work is not LLMs. It is machine learning solutions that have been taught how to do something specific. And their constraints are this big. Whereas for LLMs, they're sort of like whatever you can ask. And they're very hard to constrain. So if something's hard to constrain, as you know, we can't put parameters on it. Duh. You can't put parameters on it. You can't check it. If you can't check it, you can't measure it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were looking at machine learning, analysis things, like image processing, we have a much greater ability to know that it's safe or safe-ish than on something which is more unconstrained, like a large language model.
Yeah.
And so it makes your job that's much more difficult. That's why I say you got to know the pattern that you're using and then apply that pattern and go, yeah, that's cool. Let's do that. For that, yes, that's absolutely cool. And
So
then you can.
it sounds like you could potentially put things into categories of trustworthiness or confidence factor. So if you use this and this for this purpose, confidence is relatively high that it's going to do what it says, or the outcomes are going to be with an acceptable parameter.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the probably shouldn't talk about products or stuff here, I know. But on a panel in another
I think that's a
place,
big
won't go there
in its own right.
Yeah, but these things about trust, they like I said before, there are groups and companies out there that measure AI trust or assurance, if you will. Yeah. And that's been going on for as long as AI has been around, because it's just another model on top of that. And you guys know now how they actually do that because you've seen some of that stuff there. So, but all of them are currently, as far as I can tell, commercial. I haven't found a really comprehensive non-commercial one. And as soon as we have those ones that are more open source, like models, then maybe we'll get better at it.
I was just going to say, so this, and if you go back to my talk with Jason a couple episodes ago, you can see we spoke about, do you trust your security vendor, right? So if your security vendor is causing you more, like Cloudflare, more problems than they're helping, right? So can you trust someone that you're supposed to be trusting? And because they're going to make mistakes. And so I don't think that's what, all the security vendors, right, have had major 0 days and stuff. And so the LLMs, right, they're not all going to be perfect. And this, the machine learning is probably a lot closer because, right, it's trained on super finite, specific use case. But yeah, the LLMs, it's going to be, there's going to be times when it's going to miss the mark.
Yeah.
But again, do you care? And the AI wars are definitely started at the moment, and so it's going to be the race to who can be better in more things. But will they just get better against the tests? So just learn or teach to the test, if you know what I mean. Or will they actually be better, broader, in more ways? But we'll see.
Yeah. Have you guys looked into MOE at all? MOE models.
No.
Mixture of expert models in AI.
Oh?
Yeah. They're I think, relatively speaking, they're rather old now. A bit like RAG. About a year. No, they're older than that. That's another thing. I strongly suggest you look at that. There's a couple of papers around it, but it's very practical. Mistral as an MOE model. Yeah, and you've got Mistral accessibility right now in your LLM studios that you're using. They work slightly differently, but the architecture, I like the architecture of that. And I like agentic architectures too, because they're more in line with like my mesh thinking. But I think if we start thinking differently about it, start blobbing them up, like I was saying before, LLM is just one thing, right? You can make it do a lot more, and you can make it do a lot more in a way that is testable. In a unit test framework, if you will. You still have to accept some of the risks around their ability to hallucinate and basically lie. Sometimes, given the wrong prompt. Because there's the user that if the user's not going to give to the right thing, it's going to spit out garbage to you anyway. But there's mechanisms, architectures, and frameworks coming out now, which start going a long way to, I think, alleviating part of the paranoia I feel around the lack of control around what it's doing against what I need it to do. So if I've got an outcome I'm trying to drive, and you go into the AI, I'll get the result I need in the end. if I go in there thinking that I'm not too sure where I'm going, then it goes anywhere because I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah.
So it's like anything else that we do, you got to know before you start it, what to be, and you got to have that bit of
You have
intelligence.
to have the outcome in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, have that in mind. So you can actually cut off those edges of the responses and of the interactions that don't fit with your, that sounds like a biased idiot, but in the terms of programming, in terms of math, when you're using those models, you're safe that way. And when you're doing agentic programming, you can actually use LLMs in a way that increases the confidence level you have with the outcome you're getting. I think. But yeah, you guys explore yourself.
It just reminded me of something I wanted to mention, and that is where Apple Intelligence was doing things like summarizing spam emails and creating to-do tasks based off things that a human would read and go, that's a phishing email, or, that's a spam email. And it's going, oh, your tax return is due, or something like that. And it's like, okay, that's another problem.
I like that. I'd switch it on just for the hell of it now. Get like 1,000 spams a day, my Google Gmail address. What the hell?
Yeah, but
I've got a Nigerian relative at the moment. Yeah, I've just got to send some money every month.
Oh, well, guys, very much appreciate you coming on. Well,
Rob, say something quickly.
I'll let you get 1 minute each.
Yeah, Rob can go last. I'm just going to say thanks, Christian. We got to do this again. But the next time we've got to be playing with the AIs. Maybe you ask a question, we get an AI response to it, and you ask AI a question, maybe. But yeah.
Yes, we'll do that episode next time, because I'm sure there's going to be the new DeepSeek killer. AI will be out by then, so we can test all of them.
Yeah, well, I'll be on ChatGPT. You go on to whatever Google's got, Gemini, and Rob can use Copilot, and we'll see what happens.
Well, we can all run, Quinn and DeepSeek and whatever else.
Sounds like fun. God,
all right, Rob, any last?
I, as always, love the conversation. I think there's always something in this space that will be relevant to talk about at any given point. It's going to be a real wild ride to see. And I wanted to say it earlier as well. There are so many different factors that are directing it right now that are interesting to me. So we're seeing state-sponsored actors involved. We're seeing large sums of money being proposed, and it's really interesting. I don't recall a time where technology has been so front and center on national agendas, where it's really hard to predict what's going to happen and which direction it's going to head in. And I don't know what curveballs we could expect this year or next year. In some areas, the evolution of technology has been somewhat predictable. I'm not feeling it's that predictable with the blanket term AI or LLMs or anything that you want to describe within that blanket term. I feel like we're in uncharted territory, like real uncharted territory from a technology standpoint. And when these things occur, I usually look to draw upon from experience and look at how situations were responded to historically. I'm not sure it's necessarily going to apply. I don't know how you prepare for this.
Rob,
but I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, I'm feeling you on that one, because I too have struggled, because I realize that there's something going on here with AI that we haven't really seen before. Yeah, the all-encompassing AI term that we're using, but because I've been able to predict what technology for the past 20 years or so, and saying, oh yeah, well, I know where it's heading this year, and I can see the trends. But we have no idea how much is going to change over the next 12 months because of AI. I think we're just waiting to see what that next use case that nobody's thought about that, is going to come out. And then everybody's going, oh, wow, that just changed that industry. That industry will never be the same. We know about all the ML that's been in, different tools, cameras and diagnostic imaging and stuff. But, we have no idea where these LLMs and other things are going to go. So it's definitely going to be interesting. Yeah.
Just to point out, I mean, they had a very large actors strike last year because the Screen Actors Guild in the States were really felt threatened by the possibility that actors could be completely replaced by AI-generated personas or representations of actors instead. We don't know if that's going to happen, but it's serious enough that action has been taken because it could. And there's nothing that we can say that really dispels the notion that it can't happen. And same with a lot of other mediums, particularly where it relates to producing written work, screenwriting, novels, things like that. I don't know what's going to be disrupted. I don't think anyone has a good sense of it. And I can't remember a time in the last 30 years where we've had that level of uncertainty, even while the technology is possibly not quite as nascent as it was. Yeah, it's an interesting time.
Definitely. I think we could continue this conversation for another hour or two. So we'll have to do it again.
We'll run out of
run out of drink on this one. So appreciate it, guys. And anybody watching, if you have any comments or want to ask any questions or anything you want us to explore next time we get together, pop it in the comments. And thanks for coming on, guys. Thanks for joining us today. And if you have any questions for the guests, pop them into the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe.